So, if I am interested in your program and I want to apply to the University of Minnesota Health Coaching Program, what are my next steps?
Well, next steps involve an online application. Our application process is available year round, although we only review applications and do admissions once a year, and the deadline for that application process is March 15th each year. So the process, as I mentioned, is entirely online. It involves a 3 to 5 page personal statement that really tells us about you. We want to know who you are, what was your holistic path, why are you interested in this, what's your passion, and so that's what we want to hear about in the personal statement. It requires 3 letters of recommendations, and while it will suggest that those letters be academic letters, we recognize that many of our students are adult students who have been away from school for a little while, so they may not all be formal academic recommendations, but we do require professional recommendations. So we don't want a letter from your hairdresser or your next door neighbor. These can be people you worked with in a work capacity, or even if you've been a stay-at-home mom in a volunteer capacity perhaps, but we need to see professional recommendations about why the program, why you would be a good fit for our program, and why this program is really an appropriate next step for you in your professional development. Then we also require a informal copy of your transcripts. After you're admitted, if you're admitted, then formal copies of transcripts need to be supplied at that time. But for application purposes, just an informal copy of your transcripts. And the final, once that is fully complete and has been submitted to the university, we will contact you to let you know if we're interested in pursuing you as a student and if we would like to arrange for an interview. And at that point in time, you'd be contacted by our Student Services office, and we would arrange for you, preferably in person, but Skype if necessary, to come in for an interview. We then have a large faculty team that reviews the applications and the outcomes of the interview process, and students are notified of their offer of admission by early to mid-April, by mid-April usually. And then students have a couple weeks to consider, is this really what I want to do? And to really make a serious commitment, because there are people competing for placement, and we don't want students who are not really serious taking admitted spots and then deciding in August that they don't want to come. So what we ask is, after we make an offer of admission, students have until sometime around early May to make a choice if they would like to formally accept our offer of admission. And if they do that, then they will be admitted for matriculation or beginning coursework for September. So at that point in time, people can be pursuing financial aid applications, kind of getting their life in order to have dates on the calendar and be ready to queue up and go. Many students often do coursework at that point in time during the summer, but if they do that, they're actually doing that as what we call a non-degree student, meaning that they have to do that financially on their own and outside of any state or federal financial aid support. So they aren't officially in our program until September is when that would start.
So, I went to college and graduated with my bachelor's, and then I took a couple classes after that at a junior college. Do I need to include the transcript for those courses?
Yes, we like to see the course reports and grades from any post-high school education that students have done. So whether that was within the context of a degree program or just continuing professional development or education at a community college. So anything really at the college level or graduate level, we like to see. Our minimal required grade point for application is a 3.0. However, we do sometimes have a little bit of leeway around that, particularly if there was a pattern in your education over years that perhaps you had a lower grade point at the early part of your education and then kind of got your act together or changed fields and did very well later on in your life. If you've already done a graduate degree, the grade point from your graduate education weighs more highly than the grade point from your undergraduate education.
I understand there are some prerequisite classes that I have to take. Do I have to take those before I apply?
Yes, it's a really good question, and there's a little bit of variation there, I guess, with anything. All of our students are required to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree in some field to apply. This is a graduate program. So even if you come from a healthcare background that did not require a bachelor's degree, for example, if you're an RN that didn't do a BSN, you would have to complete that bachelor's degree before you could apply to our program. If you have done a a bachelor's degree in a healthcare related field, it's likely that you will have done our 3 prerequisite courses, which include human psychology, human physiology, and statistics. If your undergraduate field did not require that for the degree, or if you took a degree in something that didn't cover those areas, you would have to have taken that coursework in addition to your degree. Many of our students that come from non-healthcare backgrounds have to go out and pick up those prerequisite courses prior to coming into the program. We love it when students have completed prerequisites prior to application, but that's not always possible for everyone. So if you know that you want to apply but you haven't completed a prerequisite and you have a plan for taking that prerequisite, those prerequisites have to be completed with a B or better in the grade prior to beginning formal coursework in September. So it would be possible, for example, to do some coursework in the spring or summer to make up those prerequisites. They don't need to be done at the University of Minnesota, and so if you're missing a course, you could do that at a college near you or at an online institution. Our Student Services Office keeps a list of courses that other students have taken with some success, and so if you're looking for a location to take certain prerequisites, we may be able to help you find a course that's suitable for you.
Now, I took a statistics class about 15 years ago. Will that apply?
Do you use your statistics every day in your job?
No.
Okay. Yes. For the statistics requirement, you have to have done that within the last 7 years, unless you're actively using that statistics education in your ongoing profession. And that course has to have been, all of the prerequisite courses have to have been completed with a B or better. So also, if you did statistics 5 years ago, but you got a C in it, you'd need to repeat that and get a better grade in it before you could move ahead.
You mentioned financial aid, and I'm curious to know a little bit more about financial aid.
Well, we have two situations within our program, since we have both the post-baccalaureate certificate program in the graduate school, and then we have our master's program. The regulations are such that the graduate certificate programs are no longer eligible for federal or state financial aid, whereas master's programs are. So private financial aid sources, other types of government sources, employer sources may be used for either of those programs potentially. But if you choose to use kind of student formal state or federal financial aid, you have to use that only within the context of our master's program. Many students do start their financial aid process by filling out a FAFSA even before they start applying with us. That process can be started as early as a year, the fall before you want to start school. So that's a process to get going as soon as you have your taxes done, really is a good place to start. And I do encourage students to think creatively. Many people forget to check with their employers about possibility of reimbursement for continuing professional education offerings, and as we're a nationally accredited university, all of our courses meet most employers' requirements for the kinds of courses that employers would pay for. So you might find that there's a hidden source of funds that you didn't even know that you had. At the Center for Spirituality and Healing, we do offer one small scholarship annually, the A. Marilyn Syme Scholarship, that our students often are eligible for, and they're certainly invited to apply for that. It would not pay for a significant amount of a full-time academic year, but it's certainly a contributing piece of finances that can be helpful to students.
So is there a cost to apply?
Yes, the application process, as I mentioned, is all online, and people are welcome to kind of start and stop that. You don't have to do it all in one fell swoop. You can save your application online and come back to it while you're working on it. And in the very last stage prior, just as you submit, you need to provide a $75 non-refundable one-time fee. It is important to know when you do your online application that our process varies slightly from the actual graduate school application process. So on the Center for Spirituality and Healing's website, we have specific application instructions that it's important for you to follow that are unique to our program. So please follow those instructions step by step rather than just the generic instructions on the graduate school application page.
So if a student has questions prior to submitting the application, who would they contact?
So if you have further questions, the best way to get your next line of information would really be an email to Erin Fider in the Student Services Office. Due to a large interest and heavy volume of phone calls, sometimes it's harder for us to get a response back to you by phone, and we can often get a lot of information to you via email that will help answer your questions prior to you needing to speak to somebody, and will help us know what your question is and how to best respond to you. So we encourage you to begin that communication with the email that's provided below.